Welcome, everyone. I am a licensed broker. I'm a manager for a large corporation. I have a degree in finance and public policy. Tonight, we're going to be talking about being the architecture of your authority. So, what I mean by that is there are 9 points. And the first one is you have to recognize your intrinsic value. You have to assess your worth through your core qualities, specifically your interpersonal skill set and your ability to focus intensely to solve problems and to do the ethical thing when nobody is looking. Because I've seen many cases where people do the wrong thing only to have the past come back and bite them in a relatively adverse way, and they wind up paying heavy consequences. So I usually tell people if you do the right thing, you never have to worry. If you do the wrong thing, you always have to worry regardless of who's watching. Number two is you have to have a professional compass. You must be able to build your performance, right? You must be able to influence people with your performance, your skill set, that will eventually go on to add to your level of confidence as a human being, as an employee, as a man or a woman in your private and personal relationships with your family, your friends, because it gives you the opportunity to function independently throughout life, meaning they're gonna know who you are. They're gonna know what kind of personality you have. They're gonna know your genetic makeup, your mental and emotional makeup, and they're gonna be able to trust you more. And what you want out of life is to be authentic, right? But the bigger thing is that you want authentic people to be in your life. You don't want people to be fake in your life. You don't want them to tell you things you don't want to hear. You want to be with people who are genuine, because that's going to bring to you and create a circle of quality. Number three is you wanna master your nonverbal language. Okay, so you have to be able to utilize your time management and gestures, your gesticulations, your hand movement, your eye movement, as tools. You want them as tools that can speak for you without you speaking verbally. When you're able to do that, when you're able to communicate non-verbally, it actually carries more weight. And I've seen some research in books that say, your nonverbal cues can be as much as, the real language, maybe 70-80% of what's spoken, because human beings, as they would have it, whatever comes out of our mouth, right? Most of it can be deception. We see this, everywhere with politicians and relationships and co-workers and bosses. But the real language is spoken non-verbally. And I've told people there's this science that's been emerging for I don't know how many decades already, and I've used it myself. It's actually called the micro expressions. And those micro expressions, if you can be pretty good at detecting them, that's the actual real language. Okay, so it's probably like 70-80% micro expressions nonverbal, and 25-30% verbal. Okay, number four is you want to have an exit plan for yourself with people and environments that don't align with who you are. It could be a bad job, it could be a bad relationship, or it could be something that just doesn't feel right, something that feels off. And I remember when I was in university, one of my last courses were always asking, right? Does this feel right? One of my last professors would always ask the class, myself, does this feel right? And we have to ask ourselves, does this feel right to me as a person? Am I willing to accept this? Is this someone that I see inviting into my life? Is this someone that I believe I want to share my time with, either on the job, with family, with friends? The reason for this is because you want people to align with who you are as a female, as a male. And those viewpoints, they don't necessarily have to be shared all the time, but you want people who mesh with you in a great way, and who don't take away from you, but who in fact add from you. Okay, number five is you have to have some kind of boundaries that only you know that are relative to you and the circumstance and your circumstances. So you have to have limits. You have to place limits on yourself, what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to tolerate. All right. So we have this world that we're living in now that says, you want to tolerate everything, right? But in tolerating everything, right? And you can see this in the media. You can see this, maybe you can hear it on the radio. If you're in disagreement, you're automatically, blackballed or blacklisted because you don't agree with, person A or B, or for saying X or Y. You have to have standards for yourself. And, I remember these words that I read from Martin Luther King, and I'm just paraphrasing. It was like, the true test of a man is not where you stand in times of, agreement. It's where you stand in times of conflict. So for us women and men, where we stand when other people don't agree with us is much more important than always being agreeable to others. It says to others that I like you, you're who you are, but I don't agree with you. So we can always agree to disagree and still be cordial and have our relationships and still be productive with other people. Okay, so number 6 is you have to have some evidence that you can see or hear, some kind of data, some behavioral data from other people, or verbal confirmations from others that says, okay, this person is living up to what I need, what I want, what I demand in my life. So we can also call this being selective of who you're around. You have to be selective of the people that come into your life, the jobs you take. Don't just take a job because it sounds good or it pays more, or just don't do something that you think you're gonna be good at only to fail. So, and never do things for money. This is a hard one, right? And I know when I was starting my career, my life, I suffered and struggled a lot. I never did things for money, but I realized that if I can be an advantage, a benefit to someone, that they would see that, and I would get the promotions through my hard work. And in many jobs that didn't work out, but my current job, the corporation I'm in, it worked out. It worked out so well that I was able to climb the ladder, and I hope to still climb the ladder. So when you take a job, don't take it because for financial reasons. Some people take their jobs because they just need a job. Don't make that mistake, because what's going to happen is you're going to create a bad trail for yourself through references. You're going to create a bad paper trail, and you're going to become toxic to other people who might want to hire you, who might be interested in you, because they're going to they're going to find out what you did, who you were, and what type of employee, whether you're hireable, whether they will hire you back or no. And the other thing is, if you don't put references on your job, because this market right now is geared towards, what you've done, your reputation, your name, your good or bad name that you've created. If you don't give references, automatically it's a red flag. Okay. Number 7 is you have to be analytical. You have to have analytical trust and trust your judgment. You have to maintain a heavy level of discernment in all your interactions in life. And that means you meet people, you create relationships, right, during the day, but always at night when it's quiet. You have to be able to reflect on your interactions with people. Always have to. It's almost like you have to map your interactions. You have to be cognizant of your behavior, your verbal and nonverbal language. Not only for yourself, but for the other people that are in your life, because that behavior is going to tell you everything. It's gonna piece together. It's almost like this unspoken map of who you're really dealing with. And I don't know, I like to take notes on people. I like to study their behavior, because that's just my dynamic, my nature. And I found that when it doesn't match up to what my expectations initially were, meaning that I had a preconceived notion that was incorrect, or I might have had a preconceived notion that was correct, you can use that information to almost develop a skill to see the people for who they really truly are. And that's a very important, it's so important to have that ability to do that, because it's going to prevent you from allowing the wrong people to come into your life, hiring the wrong people. It's going to allow you to see the person for what they could become based on the personality that they already are. So, for example, if the person is not attuned to good behavior, if the person has some kind of shoddiness, some kind of maybe dark cloud, dark energy around them, you need to be able to trust that, right? Because that's going to tell you something that they're not telling you themselves. It could be an unhealthy micro expressions, which you're going to have to learn to familiarize yourself with, right? So when you learn these type of things, you're going to be able to filter through and attract the people that you want. And finally, the last two is number 8 is decisive refusal. You have to be able to decline opportunities because they don't mesh or they conflict with who you are as a female or male. And when you're able to decline opportunities, you're able to refuse. You're able to take the position of, no, I don't want this. You're going to decide to refuse for yourself. Decisive refusal, right? Because it doesn't speak to who you are as a man or a woman. Remember, the goal of life is to learn, to grow, to prosper, and to be your best self. And that is an ever changing, it's ever increasing, because the one thing constant in life is change. If people who refuse to change, people who stay where they are 5, 10, 20 years ago, they've not matured, they haven't developed, they're lacking in many areas of their life. So when you continue to grow, learn, and prosper, you're going to reach a state where it's just such a higher state of consciousness that you're going to look at who you were 5, 10 years ago. That person is going to be an essential stranger to you, and you're going to see other people in that same position where you were, and it's going to be able to help you decide whether or not you want to help this person, whether or not you might want to try to invest in this person or this relationship. Finally, you don't need validation from anyone. You have to be able to validate yourself. You have to be able to realize that, and this is probably the most important that governs the top 8 we just spoke about. When you are self-validated, it's almost like if you're self-aware, it's almost like you're able to move throughout life so much more freer, because who you are is not going to depend on how people see you. It's not going to depend on whether or not they see you as a good person or a bad person, as aloof, as this or that. In fact, people are actually going to try to mold you into what they want to see in you, because they want to be able to control you. So people are going to try to see and tell you, you should be this, you should do that. You're this, you're non-talkative, you're non-verbal, you seem too intimidating. It's all manipulation. It's all hogwash. You have to accept who you are. You have to be able to validate yourself, because people are never going to validate you. You're never going to be good enough. You're always going to be lacking. You're going to be mediocre. It's going to be okay when you really are. You've done your best, right? So you have to be able to accept that. And when you're able to accept that, you're also able to accept the first 8 we spoke about. All right, so the purpose of life is to be the best female or male you can be. And you have to be able to stay away from a lot of negative energy. Okay, so if you like anything that I said over here in this video, if you want to comment, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, feel free to do so, and I will try to get back to everyone in the comments section. I hope everyone is well. Bye for now.